Hey, it's your host, Britt, and welcome back to Fertility Ain't Fair. So today I want to start with the old saying, you never know what someone else is going through, because that is really what brought together myself and our guest. We actually worked together for a bit and had no idea that during the time we were both struggling with infertility and actually ended up going to the same clinic. Different doctors, but same team. And so after over a year, we reconnected on social media. And I was just super excited to see that she had shared, her challenges, talked about her IVF story, and she was pregnant. So super, super excited for her. And here we are. So I'm excited for her to share her journey and to learn more about the path that she had to take to get to her miracle and her motherhood story. So let's welcome Lindsay to Fertility Ain't Fair. Lindsay, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I'm super excited. So I gave the quick backstory that we used to work together and had no idea. At the same time, we were both having our own infertility struggles and ended up at the same clinic. And then it took over a year to reconnect. And I just was so happy that you were welcoming, and open with me in regards to what you've been going through, and then, giving your words of advice over to me. So thank you for coming on Fertility Ain't Fair. And we'll just jump in because I'm starting each show the same way. So I want to know, how do you identify? What are the words that you would use to describe Lindsay?
So, a few words that would describe me are strong, caring, independent, kind, daughter, sister, wife, friend to all. And now I'm so happy to say that I get to add mother to that list.
Yay! I'm so excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously our goal is to share as much success as possible, but also honor your journey from A to Z. But for right now in the moment, so you're about to be a first time mommy. So how do you feel? How has this all felt for you being it's real, it's happening. So how do you feel?
Oh gosh. It has been absolutely surreal. I mean, obviously all I've ever wanted to be is a mom, and it's finally happening, and it's crazy. We're due in about 3 short months, or less. It's like one of those things where I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's actually happening. But I will say some days are definitely hard. The trauma that infertility leaves is unfortunately so deep rooted that even when you do get that positive test, you kind of can't help but feel like you're holding your breath for the entire 9 months. Unfortunately, you're just kind of so used to bad news that you can't fully enjoy the good, which is really sad. But I think it's kind of in my defense mechanism a little bit. I'm finally starting to allow myself to let it feel real. Luckily, with the many doctor's appointments and ultrasounds, I'm able to have assurance that the baby is okay and everything's all right on track, and that not to worry. But some days it's still hard because I'm just stuck in the infertility mode of
Yeah.
bad news.
Yeah. Yeah. So how have you in the back half of your pregnancy, how have you allowed yourself to enjoy? Was it, picking out the clothes in the room, and what are the things that you have done to allow yourself to be okay and happy in this moment?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's one of those things that I kind of told myself I was going to try to get to 20 weeks before I even thought about the room.
Mm-hmm.
Um, before I bought anything. I think the first thing I bought were actually a pair of little tiny baby shoes, and they were the cutest thing I'd ever seen. I was in Target and I saw them and I started crying, and I'm like, okay, well, I have to buy these. Um, and that's kind of actually how I told my husband that we were pregnant, is with some little pink shoes to say that you're going to be a dad. But after that, I had been pretty guarded about not purchasing anything, not thinking about the nursery until I felt like we were in a good, safe place.
Yeah.
But now, since I've been able to see her little face and see her moving around and hearing the reassurance of everything's right on track, I've been able to allow myself to be okay, this is real. Like, we're gonna, at this point, I'm 27 weeks, so we're past the viability where, you know, if God forbid I did go into labor now, everything would be better than it would be before, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one step
That's
closer
so
to bringing a baby actually home, which is such a relief.
absolutely. Yeah. And is this your first pregnancy?
No. Well,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, viable, we'll say.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I had a miscarriage in January of 2020, and that's kind of what led us to this point of figuring out something was going on.
Yeah. So before we jump in there, so I guess let's go back to, pre-marriage, pre-family planning, what were your individual thoughts when it came to, wanting kids and wanting a family?
So I've always wanted kids. I originally went to college to be an elementary school teacher. Ended up taking a different route, and that's how you and I met in the marketing world. But I was always gravitating to children, especially babies. And I would be like one of those people that literally would find a baby and end up holding strangers' children. Like,
Yep, me too.
it sounds creepy.
Nope, me too.
But somehow I guess I have a trusting face or a kind face that people were like, whatever, this girl's going to hold my kid, whether I want her to or not. But yeah, I've always wanted children. And thankfully my husband and I we've been on the same page about it. He's wanted children from the start. And we had that conversation very early on in our relationship because that was like very important to me and to him. It was funny. We were actually at getting some ice cream last week, and I ran into a girlfriend from high school, and she has two little girls, and one is 3. And we're in the parking lot, and we're walking across to the ice cream store, and the little girl just grabs his hand and like walks across the parking lot holding his hand with her dad beside her. She grabbed Bobby's hand, not her dad's hand, and it like literally made me want to melt into a puddle on the ground.
Oh,
it was so sweet. And the mom looked at me and she was like, well, he's just got to get his practice in. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is going to be us in a few years when our kids
that's
like walk
awesome.
in with ice cream. Yeah. It was really sweet.
That's awesome. I love that. So at that point, so okay, marriage does happen and you are both on the same page. And so, when did you all say, okay, we want to start to conceive? Was it immediate? Did you all give yourself some time? Like, what was kind of like your envisionment for how your family was going to start at the beginning?
Yes. We were actually a military couple, and we kind of bounced around all over Georgia for a while. And we both had said, okay, we knew that his military career was going to end. So we're like, why don't we wait till we get settled in Richmond, get jobs, feel comfortable, move all settled into our home. And then, of course, everyone around us at that point was having babies left and right. So we had really no reason to think we would have any issue at all. Because, I mean, why would you? I'll say this too, like being in school, no one ever mentions the possibility of struggling to conceive. It's always,
right?
Do not have sex. Don't look at a penis. You're going to get pregnant. Like, I remember, it's hilarious. I had my best friend, who's still my best friend to the day. We used to write notes back and forth to each other. We were in, I think, middle school. And she was like, can you get pregnant from dry humping? And I'm like, it just goes to show you, we don't know anything. Like, you think you can get pregnant from anything. They don't ever say it could potentially be an issue. So we're kind of set up for failure a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
So
I totally agree.
Yeah. So you're like, the whole time you're trained, oh my gosh, I got to take this pill every single day at the exact same time, or I will get pregnant. And of course that happens for some people, which is wonderful, if that's their plan. But that was unfortunately not what happened for us.
Yeah, it's like all the things that like you wish you would have been told, or just I guess wish you would have been exposed to, because I really felt the same way. Like we've grown up in this world where, like I said, it was like, don't get pregnant, don't have sex, take birth control, all these things. And then you get to the point where you actually want to get pregnant and start a family. And then when that doesn't happen, like as you envisioned it, it's like, it's devastating.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the whole vision is like blown to shit. And you're just like, wait, I thought if I did these quote unquote right things and I got married and I had my person and, I tried to do all the right things leading up to this point, and then you're ready. And then it's just like, well, no. And it's like,
Right.
but how come no one said there were other possibilities? And maybe that scared us to death, but like, how come there wasn't more of a conversation around reproductive health and things that could affect it before you're like 20 some, 30 some, and you're trying to like figure it all out now? Because now it's like crazy.
Right. And that's what's crazy too, is it's like they don't also talk about how hard it is to try to get pregnant naturally. Like
Yes.
I felt like neurotic at times. Like
Mm-hmm.
I would call my husband in the middle of the day and be like, "Oh my gosh, it's time. You need to come home for lunch." And then I'd be like, "Did we miss it by 27 minutes?" Like
Right.
stupid stuff that
Yeah.
you just don't know until you're in that place. And then of course, when you do find out down the road that there's something actually else going on, you're like, how do I wrap my brain around this? That's something
Mm-hmm.
that so fun and also connecting and intimate and something that you're supposed to like enjoy with your spouse is kind of not fun anymore.
Yeah. Yep. And it's
It's
like a
it makes
science
me
project.
sad. Yeah.
It's sad. It's like so much science behind it, and it's like, once again, you were never really explained like the intricacies of how a baby is made. It was very simple for us. It was like, this is what happens. You get together, boom, 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 and you could get pregnant. But it was like, no, there's a lot of science behind this, and no one's really broken this down for us. And like you said, now you're trying to like, get your brain wrapped around it, and it's just so much
It
at one
is.
time,
But it goes to show too, like now that I know what I know,
Hmm.
every single person on this earth was actually like a true miracle because
Yeah.
the science, like you said, behind actually getting pregnant, everything has to line up and the stars have to line up perfectly.
Hmm.
And everything has to happen at the exact perfect moment for it to happen. And it just makes you think, wow, like, when you're having a bad day and you're like, damn, I was put on this earth for, I guess, a real reason.
Yeah. So we talked about a little, about how normal journeys look, or, easier journeys look. And so at what point in time, or did you think, okay, something here is different, or like something could be wrong? Because like you mentioned, people are, getting pregnant left and right. We think it should be easy. We're trained to think that. So like, when did you feel like, okay, there's something else going on here, and I might need to get like additional help from like a specialist?
So it's really funny you asked me this. I had always said my biggest fear was not being able to have children,
Mm.
not your normal fear like dying alone or spiders or the dark. I mean, I vividly remember saying this in early high school and honestly don't even know where this fear came from because it was never like a thing. It wasn't
Hmm.
talked about, it wasn't mentioned. Wasn't even in the TV or movies at this
Hmm.
point. I mean, back in, I guess I was graduated in 2008. So like early 2000s, I just for some reason would always say it. It was just like a deep fear that I'd always had, but I mean, I guess it was for good reason.
Hmm.
My gut ended up telling me something was off after us trying for about 6 months. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I just knew something. And I'm
Yeah.
so glad I went with my gut because I ended up figuring out what was wrong with me.
It's crazy that you say that, because I too have always had that fear. And once again, I don't know where it came from. There was nothing medically at that time that would have told me that that could be a possibility, but there was just something in me. I would joke about it, and I hate saying that now because it's obviously not a joke, and it's very real. And so, hindsight's 2020. But like, I always would have, laughs with my girlfriends, like, I'll be the one who can't have kids, or watch, I'm the one who can't get pregnant. And I
I said
joked
the
about
same
it. It's
thing.
crazy, but I've never also, like, you're the first person I think that I have shared that with, like, because in terms of like, I never heard someone else say that. Even my husband was like, you used to say blah, blah. And I was like, I know, right? Like, even when I
And you're
met
like,
you,
did I
I was
jinx
saying it.
myself?
Right. And that's exactly where I was. I was like, you know what? I said it so much that it became true, but then I had to, get through that thought process because that is a dark hole.
Oh gosh,
Um,
yes.
but I'm glad that you said that because it just makes me feel a little bit better about not, I mean, I wish I would never have said it, but there was just something that just told me, you know? I don't know.
Oh yeah. I mean, and same. Say it all the time. And it'd be like, everybody, even when people were around me getting pregnant and we hadn't even started trying, I kept saying it like, my biggest fear, I'm just really worried. And it came from nowhere because
Yeah.
I didn't at that point have any medical, information to back it
Hmm.
up. But I'm glad I went with my gut and seeked help because if I hadn't, I definitely wouldn't be pregnant right now. I don't know how long my journey would have continued.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I mean, so obviously being ecstatic now to be almost mom, but the journey was not easy and it wasn't linear by any means. It was definitely a challenge. So I guess take us to like the beginning. I know it's a lot, right, to put into words, the last several years, but kind of like take us back to the beginning of your journey and kind of what was the path like for you guys?
Oh gosh. Well, without taking up hours of our time, I'll try to condense this down a little bit. But basically, we tried naturally, and like I said, a little bit neurotic at times. And gosh, what those times were not very fun.
Yeah.
um, until about January of 2020, and then so it's interesting because I'm not sure if it was a chemical pregnancy or a miscarriage, which I think
Hmm.
they're kind of the same thing. But
Hmm.
um, that was confirmed by my primary care physician, and I kind of expressed to her my concerns. Luckily, without even question, she referred me to a specialist. Like I said, I kind of told her I knew something was my gut was wrong. I didn't know what it was or even how to put my finger on it. But I really appreciated her referring me because, in all honesty, like that's truly the best thing that could have happened because typically they want you to try for at least a year
Yeah.
before they'll even see you or give you any type of medical treatment.
Hmm.
So I met with this guy, luckily friends, and like she just said, he's very forward thinking. And he probably won't even really ask why you're here. He'll just get down to business. And I'm like, perfect. That's what
Yeah.
I need. So we kind of had to start from scratch because he didn't know really anything about me. So we did a lot of blood work, a couple ultrasounds. And then what was interesting is the ultrasound had left some questions. And he's like, but I really think we should do a CT scan. And I'm like, is that normal? Of course,
Right.
at that point, I had no idea, but I'm like, sure, if you're telling me to do CT scan, let's go for it.
Hmm.
So I do a CT scan, and this time of the world was right when the pandemic hit. This was like right around February, March.
Hmm.
Did a CT scan, ironically, laid off from work that week. And that day I was laid off, he called and was like, I don't want to concern you or scare you, but we think there may be a tumor. He was like, I don't know if it's cancerous. I don't know what it is, but it looks kind of funny to me. So I want to do MRI. And I'm like, oh my God.
That's
You know,
terrifying.
yeah.
Like,
So global pandemic, laid off, and now potentially have a tumor. I'm like, awesome. So for about 9 days, we're all just kind of sitting on pins and needles, being like, oh gosh, well, this journey took a huge turn. So luckily, the MRI actually confirmed a unicorn uterus, which it sounds very magical,
it
but
does.
it's not. I can promise you it's
Right.
not.
Right.
um, but we were overjoyed that it wasn't cancer or tumor or
Yeah.
anything that was crazy. And then it's funny that I say crazy because once we figured out what this was, we were like, oh, interesting.
Hmm.
So as far as the diagnosis goes, it felt really good to have answers. it also felt great knowing I followed my gut and my intuition, because
Yeah.
I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what it was.
Mm-hmm.
So for those listeners who do not know what a unicorn uterus is, basically it's a rare genetic condition where only half of your uterus forms. It's smaller than a typical uterus. It typically has one fallopian tube, and it's kind of shaped like a single horned uterus. It's very complicated. Like if you think about a regular uterus, it's like shaped kind of like a triangle, and then you have your two fallopian tubes, your two ovaries. Well, in my case, I had both tubes, but only one was partially connected. So with it being partially connected, when I would have my period, that blood would kind of seep out of that area and spill into my pelvic cavity, which was causing severe pain. But once again, going back to our conversation about like reproductive health and in high school, like they basically just told you periods hurt, suck it up, deal with it.
Right.
So I just assumed this severe pain I was dealing with every single month was totally normal. And it wasn't. So he was like, okay, we have the answer. You have a unicornuate uterus, but with this fallopian tube being not fully connected, another reason why you're not getting pregnant too is that if you're ovulating on that side, the egg is slipping out of that area too.
Right. Okay.
So his suggestion was, let's go ahead and get you hooked up with a fertility specialist so we can loop them in and let them know what's going on. Because I guess experience he had seen most people that had the unicornuate uterus typically needed some additional fertility treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So like, okay, I'm cool with that. Turns out both him, my doctor, and my fertility specialist were familiar with this condition. So I ended up having surgery to remove that fallopian tube. Well, while they're in there, they severe endometriosis.
Yeah.
And was able to remove it, which was great. Basically, endometriosis is like scarring that develops where it's not supposed to.
Was yours on your tubes and the uterus, or where was your endo?
It was everywhere.
Okay.
And it was crazy because I came out of surgery and they had told my husband, they were like, we're blown away that she has not complained about pain.
Wow.
Because the amount of endometriosis that we removed made us think that she should have been in excruciating pain like all the time.
Wow.
But I think I may have high pain tolerance, but I just thought it was normal. Like I truly thought having to like take Midol and Advil and using the heating pad and all of that was totally normal, but clearly it's not.
Yeah. Yep.
So, at that point, we had countless tests done, ultrasounds, blood work, and in pretty invasive surgery. The surgery is similar to almost like a C-section. So I have a lovely scar already. But that's okay. You know what? It's okay. And I will say this, after my surgery, I was pain-free for, at this point, a year, because I had the surgery last May. But as far as periods go, I did not have another painful period until I got pregnant.
Wow.
Which was incredible.
That is incredible. Yeah.
So, that surgery alone was huge. It obviously helped me get closer to my end goal of getting pregnant, but just from a, point of being able to like live comfortably, it made the world of a difference. So what we did from there is, after the surgery I healed, we were like super excited and once again naive to think that we could get pregnant naturally. So he was like, all right, well, why don't we just do like a medicated cycle and timed intercourse? And we're like, yes, this is going to be it. We're going to get it. It's going to be awesome. And
what meds did you use for that?
I used Clomid.
Clomid, yeah.
Yes. So we were super pumped and we were like, Clomid's cheap. This is going to be great. We're not going to have to go the expensive route.
Yes.
Well, a few months of that, countless negative pregnancy tests is just like a kick in the gut. Yeah. And I will say, when you only have one fallopian tube, you have to wait till you ovulate on the correct side.
Yep.
Because I have both ovaries, but like you have to wait until the ovary with the fallopian tube ovulates.
Yep.
So we had it against us from the get-go.
Yeah,
where
same.
it's like, yeah, we gotta wait. And you're like,
Yep.
damn it, it's not the month. Like, you get so excited, you have all these follicles growing, and then you ovulate on the wrong side.
Yeah.
So that was always a bummer. So then we were like, okay, let's switch to IUI, because that's a little bit more controlled and a little bit more financially, you know, easier to swallow.
Yeah, for sure.
And unfortunately, that did not work either. And so we had to have a very tough conversation with our doctor. And he was like, honestly, like, I think you're the perfect candidate for IVF. And I will say, like, after months of negative pregnancy tests and like looking at our journey of everything we had been through, I'm like, you know, if I can take some more control over this situation, I think I will feel a lot better. And fortunately for my personality type and how IVF works, we were able to go that route. And I will say, like, I know that IVF is not for everybody due to that financial burden, you know, not to mention insurance doesn't cover shit, which is so frustrating.
Right.
I truly realize how blessed we are to even have had the opportunity to do it. It's a lot on your body, you know, absurd amounts of hormones being injected. But I will say, like, every time I got ready to do it, I was like, okay, this is going to get me one step closer to having a baby. And I just need to suck it up. But also I will say there's a huge misconception about IVF. People think if you do IVF, you're going to get pregnant.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not the case. It just gives you another chance at getting pregnant.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, going through all of this, I'd been able to find a pretty good support system online. Thankfully, people are now talking about these topics and able to share, you know, similar to your podcast, which I'm so appreciative of you doing this. It's given people the opportunity to hear similar stories to themselves and not feel so alone. But there were a lot of people that I had connected with that had multiple failed IVF cycles.
Yeah.
And it's just like devastating to hear that. And also it's hard going into something new, trying to stay positive and excited and hopeful, and then knowing in the back of your head that this huge financial burden also could result in another negative test.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I mean, during this time, obviously, it's a lot going on top of the hormones, on top of just being drained. I think, you know, is it emotionally, mentally, physically? So how did you cope? Like, what were the things that you had to do to keep your mind and body healthy? Because that's like more than half the battle, I think, is finding the ways to get through it. Because you can, you know, I think, you know, we're all tough enough now. We're strong enough. We can, you know, stick it out through, you know, the meds. We can stick it out through the injections and all of that. But how do you keep yourself sane? I guess, you know, how'd you do it?
That's a great question. I'm still trying to figure that part out. No, in all seriousness. So, like, I mean, I've been totally transparent this, you know, part from the start until now. So I'm like, why sugarcoat this? The mental toll that this journey had taken on me, like, was harder than anything I'd ever been through ever. And my husband was in the military. He deployed to Syria. Like, you know, I've had death in the family, like you name it, things that you're like, you know, that's really sad or that's hard. But like, this just was something that I didn't even know how to cope with. And typically I'm very open and like to talk things through, and, you know, therapy for sure, you know, talk to my girlfriends, parents, but some days I would just have to shut down. Like, I just could not, some days couldn't talk to friends or families members, you know, no one seemed to understand. I really didn't want to talk to my husband because truly I felt like I was letting him down. Like, I felt like I was letting him down because I wasn't able to give him exactly what he wanted, family. And that killed me. I mean, we're a teammate, we're team members, you know, we're teammates. And we both want something. We're both very type A people where we're like, if we see something or want something, we're going to go for it. And we're going to work as hard as we can to get it. And this was something that we just like worked so hard for, and we were still not getting the end result. And it was so hard.
Right.
I will say there are times to pull myself up off the ground. And I would just have to have a little pep talk with myself and be like, okay, today we're only going to look forward. Luckily after my diagnosis, I had actually found an online support group for the Unicornuate Uterus on Facebook, which is crazy. There are actually two women that are local, that one went to high school and the other one went to, she didn't go to college with me, but I knew her through college.
Oh, wow.
Crazy. So one of them actually has a 6-month-old baby boy, and the other one's having her egg retrieval tomorrow. And so it's been so amazing to have these connections where we can talk about, like, how are you feeling today and what's going on? And especially the one that's already had her baby, I'm like, oh my gosh, she actually got pregnant naturally, which is incredible. Her story is one of those that you're like, oh my gosh, this is such a God moment. She had talked about, like, I guess financially what they thought would make the most sense for their family. And she was like, I don't think I could mentally cope with IVF failing. So she was like, we're going to take, that money and actually go the adoption route. So they filled out all of that adoption paperwork and she got pregnant.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
And
wow.
So it was one of those things where you're like, oh my gosh, like, this is amazing. And they had been trying for 7 years, I believe. And then another girl that I was mentioning that has the Unicornuate Uterus and has her egg retrieval tomorrow, she had just found out she had the unicornate in January. And she's very similar to me, where she's like, you know what, we're gonna just go straight for it and dive right into IVF, because that was like what her doctor had suggested. So just exciting to be able to have people to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel weird saying excited, because that's terrible. I don't wish this on anybody, but at the end of the day, it does make you feel like you're not alone. And what's interesting to me too is, like, I'm sure people have heard the statistic, but like 1 in 8 struggle to conceive. And that's a lot.
It is.
Like, a lot more than we realize. And I feel like we have to get rid of the stigma that, like, sex and fertility are so private. I mean, if that were truly the case, then a woman wouldn't be asked 500 times a week, when are we having children?
Right?
Like, I'm not kidding. At my wedding reception, I was asked 4 different times when we would have children. Yeah. I'm like, first, can I get through my own damn wedding? I mean, seriously? And of course I laughed it off at the time, but now I'm like, now knowing what I've been through, it's just not an appropriate question to ask anybody.
It's not.
You just don't know what people are going through. And I mean, like I said before, luckily we just live in a time where social media has allowed us to have the platform to reach out to other people. In your case, you set up this awesome podcast and your Instagram page and allowed people to, talk about their struggles, or at least listen in and feel like they're not alone. And sharing it is hard at times, but it definitely, and it makes you very vulnerable. But I will say, for me, it's helped with my healing for sure.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think, that was the whole goal, was to I just felt like I was being pulled in the direction that it needed to happen. And it's been just crazy to have, just people in my circle like you who, we had never discussed it in person before. And here we are now, talking about all these things and then having some shared experiences. Obviously you have a unique condition, but I also share in the endo world and in the one fallopian tube world and the surgery world and the scars world. And with all things, God willing, I'll also share in the IVF world and, prayerfully have a success story to share as well. But it's just, like you mentioned, being able to connect with strangers and other people, whether it's friends, family, what have you, it's just been really overwhelming in a positive way, because it is hard to share. But as you mentioned, like, when you start doing it, you realize how common it is. And if we all were sharing, we would all feel like 10 times better about where we were and not, compare so much to, well, it was easy for her, why not me, and all of that. It's like, well, I know I have my own community and I'm going to find it, and I have that place to just be transparent and
Absolutely.
get through it, But I think
Because it's
also,
easy to get down that rabbit hole of
oh
like,
my God,
woe is me, this is
girl.
not fair. Yeah.
Yes.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's a hard place to be, because it's hard to, but I
It
think
is.
you
Yeah.
need to look forward and rely on these people that truly have your back and understand like the emotional and physical and financial toll it takes on you. I mean, it's amazing talking to some of these women that you don't really even know, and the
Mm-hmm.
connection you make right off the bat. Like some of
Yeah.
these women, I would say I'm a little bit closer to than some of my best friends, because they just get it.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure. And so I know we've discussed on other episodes, like, I believe in faith and science, and but faith, typically I think that for a lot of us plays a large part of the journey. Whatever your faith may look like, for everyone's different. But for you, like, did you feel like faith was part of your journey in allowing you to find ways to cope and be, faithful throughout the process?
Oh gosh. So this is and like I had said before, there's no point in sugarcoating this. I struggled with my faith as a kid. I was kind of forced to go to church, didn't really understand it, didn't really enjoy it. So my parents were kind of like, whatever, we give up. We'll let you just kind of figure out your own thing. So we moved back to Richmond. I actually started going to church with my sister, and was, I'm not gonna lie, kind of hesitant to go, but she was like, come on, it's very casual, like no pressure. It's not going to be, one of those churches that everybody's going to be notice if you're there or not. I'm like, okay, cool, I'll go. So the first service I attended with her actually weirdly moved me, and I cried, and I was kind of embarrassed. I cried because I'm like, what am I doing? I don't even want to be here. And now I'm crying. Like, I felt like the message was absolutely tailored to me that day. And ever since then, I started going regularly. Even was actually baptized in January of 2020 before I miscarried. And I don't think there's a coincidence in that, because I think it allowed me to kind of stay grounded in my faith from then to be able to get me to where I am now. My faith definitely was tested more than I'd like to admit. Some days I would be super mad at God because I just didn't understand. And then I'd be even more upset, mad at God. So it was like this internal struggle of like, I shouldn't be upset with him. Like, I have so much to be blessed and thankful for. And here I am, like, upset when I look, especially in the state of the world it was in, the global pandemic going on around me. And I'm like, I'm so selfish. Like, why am I being like this?
Yeah.
And I will say, like, I continue to push through, and I was continuing to attend virtual services. And the messages, weirdly enough, continued to feel like they were designed for me. One service, and I'll never forget this, and I actually videotaped it. He talked about life, and it turns out his twins were actually conceived via IVF.
Oh, wow.
Luckily, I was in the comfort of my own home listening to this, because I was like sobbing hysterically. These signs and messages that kept coming to me, like, didn't feel like a coincidence.
Yep.
So I kind of had this moment of where I'm like, instead of being upset with God, I'm going to just lean into him and like kind of leave it all for him and be like, look, I have no control in this. I'm doing everything I can do, from like a doctor standpoint, and, seeing all the right people and trying to take care of myself the best I can. But like, I'm at a crossroad where I'm like, I just can't do anything else. And I need to just let you be God and do your thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some days are still really hard, but I know he's got me. And I will tell you this, actually, you and I think we talked about this a couple months ago, where, what do you say daily that helps you get through? And my
yes, I love
mantra,
it. I love your mantra. Yes.
So I was like, right before I started IVF, I would say every single night, I would say, my body is strong. My body is capable. I am worthy of being a mother. And I know that God has got me every step of the way.
I love it.
Yeah. And I felt like it was one of those things where I'm like, I can definitely say that every day even when I'm feeling weak or down, I'm like, you know what? Like, I'm strong and I've got this and I'm absolutely worthy. And I know that God's got me. I mean, and that's all you can do is just kind of put your faith in him. If you're doing everything you can on the other side, like, putting the work in.
And you've reminded me that I actually made a note just now to write my fertility mantra. I had done one a couple of years ago, probably in 2019, with my therapy. And it was more, it was general, but I mean, you could apply to anything, but it was still a little more general. But I need to write one that is very specific to this journey. And so that is going to be what I do this week. Because, like you said, to have something that's simple that I can remember every single day, I'll probably put it up some places in the house so I can remind myself. But it's important. And I think I absolutely believe in the power of mantras and affirmations to change your thought process, that somehow unlocks something, in your mind or your body to make that thing happen, right? Like,
Yeah.
I believe in it too. So I thank you for sharing your mantra, because I might take some of those words.
Oh, please. It's very simple. And some may think it's silly. Like, I'm sure if I told my husband that I said this every single night, he'd be like, what is wrong with you? But for me, it works. And for me, It just gets me back to being in that positive mindset, because with infertility, you can be in the dark, in the very deep, dark, terrible places for a long time. And, I don't want to ever be in that place again. And I will say, like, it kills me knowing that other people are there or have been there. And that's why I also want to share and be a sounding board for other people if they want to talk. And of course, opening up and sharing is not for everybody.
Right.
But
sure.
If it is, and somebody that's listening right now, or, here's your story or my story, and they feel comfortable to reach out, that's huge. I just want people to feel like I'm there for them and I can be a sounding board. And I will say, since sharing my journey, I've met a few other friends and actually been able to refer people to the doctors I've seen, which has been amazing, because I feel like we're very blessed and lucky to be in Richmond with these doctors we have, because you and I are at the same clinic and they're top notch. For sure.
Yeah, they are. I think I thought about, you said the coincidences, not being coincidences with, the things happening right in the right time, and the kind of the God things happening. And I thought about a book that I had read. It was probably maybe 2018 or so, or maybe it's 2017. It was a gift. It was called When God Winks at You. Have you ever heard of that book?
I haven't, but I need to look into that.
The author is Squire Rushnell. It's a very unique name, but it's called When God Winks at You. And the God winks, I mean, it's literally, God is winking at you, but it's like how God speaks directly to you through the power of coincidence.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought about that when you mentioned it. I was looking up real quick, but share that book with you and whoever else. But it's a really good, quick read, like story book kind of read. But it's good. But I truly believe in God winks. I know that they are a real thing, and that I have also felt like that, with people or things that have happened along my journey. I used to call it little like lights on my journey, because it's kind of it was like I felt dark. I was in a dark space, and then a light would happen, and it would be, someone sharing, or it would be a situation or a place or a person or a thing. And it was like, I too was like, that can't be coincidence. Like, I needed that at that moment, and it happened, and it was like, oh, that's a God wink. That's God winking at me.
Oh, I love that. I have to read that for sure.
Yeah, it's really cute. So we've talked about a lot. And, as we kind of wrap up, I always want to leave, our community with advice or takeaways. So what advice do you have for those either starting their journey or someone who is literally in the thick of it today?
So the best piece of advice I can give someone that's either starting their journey or who's in the thick of it, you need to advocate for yourself. Go with your gut. you know your body more than anyone else. And just really listen to it. Push for those specialists if that's what you feel is necessary. I mean, my situation, I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what it was, but I'm just so glad I pushed for myself. And it's funny, my mother-in-law was like, gosh, I've never seen someone who is so like determined when it comes to stuff. She was like, you kept telling us you knew something was wrong, but you just didn't know what. And she's like, and it's amazing how quickly you were able to figure it out with the right team of doctors.
Yeah.
What's funny is when I was telling y'all about my journey, I contacted my first doctor in January of 2020. I ended up getting pregnant. Let me think. January of 2021. So
Wow.
it took me a year, and it sounds long, but if you think about finding 3 different doctors and having your diagnosis figured out,
And surgery. You had
and
surgery
surgery,
too, and healed.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's pretty
So it
quick.
was quick. It was very
Yeah.
quick, thankfully, because I'm not patient. But advocate for yourself and push, because luckily now that the world's opening back up and you're able to get into the doctor's offices and stuff, people, are willing to see you. And I will say, when it comes to your mental health, that's the most important one. I mean, give yourself grace. Know that this will not last forever. Unfortunately, like most things in life, time helps and heals. And I know nobody wants to hear that, because that just sucks. You don't want to wait. And I will say too, when thinking back, if somebody had said, just give it a year, I'd be like, a year? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I
Right.
want it now. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to wait. I'm ready right now. But knowing what I know now, I've been able to take care of myself and get myself and my body in the best place it can be to be able to carry this baby. Allow yourself to feel all of the feelings. Suppressing it, unfortunately, just makes it a little bit harder. Learn to be able to say no to certain things that will help guard your heart, like a baby shower or kid's birthday. I've had to say no to quite a few things because my heart couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And that's okay. And luckily, people around you, if they know what you're going through, they completely understand. And if not, then they shouldn't be in your tribe. Definitely talk about it if you want. And like I said, find your tribe or your community and lean into them. Feeling alone in your journey is definitely an easy thing to do, but just know there's so many women out there that are feeling just like you and that are a good resource if you do want to talk.
Lindsay, I just thank you again for being a faithful fertility advocate and also someone in my circle of hope. You have been nothing but open and helpful as we two plan for our IVF journey. You've been transparent and allowed me with open arms just to ask you questions and just, open to give me any feedback or things learned, from your journey. So I appreciate you and I thank you. I can't wait to see you in full mommy mode and to meet your little girl. So we love the fact that you were able to share your success story with our Fertility Ain't Fair community, and also that we can in turn honor your journey. So sending you lots of love and prayers for a peaceful end to your pregnancy and the beginning of motherhood. So if you have enjoyed this episode, please like, follow, and share. Find us on social media at Fertility Ain't Fair, and check out our website, fertilityaintfair.com. And as always, until next time, I am your friend in fertility. Stay hopeful.